You know that moment when you send a message to someone you love, and then the silence that follows feels like a verdict? Not an inconvenience, not a minor delay, a verdict. Your phone sits there, screen dark, and something in you shifts, not dramatically, not all at once, but quietly, the way a room changes when a light goes out. You start retracing everything, the exact words you used, the punctuation, whether that last sentence came across the way you intended. You replay the last conversation you had in person, scanning it the way a detective scans a crime scene, looking for the moment something might have broken without you noticing. And here's the part that makes it so unbearable. You already know you're overthinking. You can see yourself doing it. You're watching the spiral from the inside. I'm fully aware of how irrational it is, and that awareness changes absolutely nothing. The spiral keeps going. The analysis continues. And somewhere underneath all of it is a question you never quite say out loud. Are we still okay? Do they still want me here? If you've lived inside that experience, not once, not occasionally, but as a recurring feature of your closest relationships, then what I'm about to share isn't just interesting psychology. It's your story. And it's one that for most people has never been told with the precision it deserves. Because here is the paradox at the center of all of this. The very thing that makes you so deeply attuned to the people you love, the sensitivity, the vigilance, the extraordinary capacity to feel, is the same thing that turns love into a source of chronic anxiety. The gift and the wound are the same thing. They always have been. Let's give this experience the language it deserves. What you're living with has a name. It's called rejection sensitivity. And I want to be precise about what that means, because it is so much more than simply fearing breakups or conflict. Rejection sensitivity is a neurologically grounded, often lifelong pattern in which the nervous system develops a hair-trigger response to any perceived signal of emotional withdrawal. Not confirmed rejection, not actual abandonment, just the possibility. A shorter reply, a change in tone, a pause that lasts a second too long. For people with high rejection sensitivity, these signals don't just register as mildly concerning. They activate the brain's threat detection system with the same intensity as a physical danger. The amygdala, the brain's ancient alarm center, fires. Cortisol rises. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational perspective, goes partially offline. In that state, the mind doesn't reason its way through the silence. It survives it. This connects directly to what psychologists call hypervigilance, a state of sustained, exhausting alertness that was originally designed for environments where emotional safety was genuinely unpredictable. When you grow up in a home where love felt conditional, where affection could be withdrawn without warning, or where the emotional temperature of the adults around you determined your sense of safety, your nervous system adapts. It builds a surveillance system. It learns to scan constantly for micro changes in behavior, tone, and energy. Not because you chose to, but because staying alert was once the cost of staying safe. And here's what neuroscience confirms: the default mode network, the part of your brain that activates when you're not focused on a task, the part responsible for self-referential thinking. In people with this pattern, it doesn't rest. It ruminates, it rehearses, it replays. What looks like overthinking from the outside is, from the inside, a nervous system doing the only job it was ever trained to do. Watch for what might go wrong before it does. The third concept worth naming here is anxious attachment, a relational style, often developed in early childhood, in which closeness feels both desperately necessary and fundamentally unsafe. The attachment figure becomes simultaneously the source of comfort and the source of threat. And so, the person learns to love with one hand extended and one hand braced for impact. This is not a character flaw. This is architecture, built under pressure, built for survival. Now, let's talk about what this actually costs. Carl Jung wrote that, "What we don't make conscious emerges later as fate." For the rejection-sensitive overthinker, that fate often looks like this: a life lived in service of other people's emotional states, a constant low-grade labor of monitoring, adjusting, appeasing, trying to ensure that the people they love stay close, stay warm, stay there. Think about the invisible work involved. Every interaction carries weight. A dinner conversation isn't just a dinner conversation. It's a subtle performance review, a test of whether you're still wanted, still enough. A quiet evening with a partner isn't restful. It's an opportunity to notice every small thing and wonder what it means. Even moments that should feel safe become charged with a kind of low-frequency dread. This is what I call relational exhaustion. And it's one of the most under-acknowledged forms of suffering, because it doesn't look dramatic from the outside. You're not falling apart. You're functioning. You're showing up. You might even appear confident and easygoing to everyone around you, but internally, you are working, all the time, in every relationship, carrying a weight that no one else can see. And the cruelest part? The very sensitivity that drives all this vigilance also means you feel everything more. The warmth when someone is present, the joy of real connection, the profound relief when you finally feel truly safe with someone. You experience the full spectrum, which means you experience the lows with the same intensity as the highs. You were never built for numbness, you were built for depth, and depth, without understanding, can feel like drowning. Let's make this concrete, because rejection sensitivity doesn't stay abstract. It shapes behavior in very specific, recognizable ways. You might find yourself over-explaining in conversations, adding layer after layer of context to your words, trying to preemptively close every possible gap through which you might be misunderstood. You might become an expert at reading rooms, the first to sense tension, the first to try to dissolve it, the unofficial emotional regulator in every group you belong to. In romantic relationships, you might oscillate between deep closeness and sudden, overwhelming panic when your partner seems even slightly distant. Not because the relationship is failing, but because your nervous system cannot reliably distinguish between a bad day and the beginning of the end. At work, you might struggle to receive feedback without interpreting it as fundamental rejection, even when it's constructive, even when it's kind. A single critical comment can override 20 positive ones. This isn't weakness, it's a nervous system that learned to weight negative signals far more heavily than positive ones, because negative signals once carried more consequence. You might over-apologize. You might abandon your own needs mid-sentence when you sense someone else's discomfort. You might have a deeply uncomfortable relationship with asking for things, because asking means risking a no, and a no, however small, registers somewhere deep as you are too much. You are not enough, you should not have asked. These are not personality traits. These are coping strategies. And the first step toward freedom is learning to see them as such, not with judgment, but with the kind of clear, compassionate witnessing that you have likely never fully offered yourself. Healing from this doesn't mean becoming someone who doesn't feel deeply. It doesn't mean dismantling your sensitivity or learning to care less. The goal, as the psychologist Bessel van der Kolk puts it, is not to silence the past. It's to help the body understand that the past is over. That begins with inner child reparenting, the slow, deliberate practice of offering your younger self the consistency and emotional safety it never reliably received. It means, when the spiral begins, pausing to ask, whose fear is this? How old is the part of me that's afraid right now? And answering that question not with logic, but with gentleness. It means choosing, again and again, to stay present with uncertainty rather than rushing to resolve it through analysis. It means building enough internal safety that you no longer need external validation to feel stable. You are not too much. You never were. You were simply someone who learned to love in a world that didn't always make love feel safe. And learning to unlearn that, slowly, imperfectly, with enormous compassion for yourself, is not weakness. It is, without question, one of the bravest things a person can do.